Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in. I am so freaking hype. I know I've talked about it on the show before about this guest coming on, and I was so excited. So Tadhg Hickey, who is joining us from Cork, which I love so much. That was one of my favorite places when I went to Ireland. Thank you so much, Tadhg. You are a treasure. Thanks so much for giving me the honor.
Thank you, Joy, and well done on your pronunciation of my name. It's extraordinary that you got it absolutely correct, because it's the most mangled name in world geopolitics. So well done.
In fairness, I saw your video with Fiorelli, or I forget how you say, Fiorelli, and how you were just like, oh, because I was like, oh my God, like I was wondering how to say it, too. So your video educated me. So good job with that. If for those of you who don't know, Tadhg is a comedian, should I say turned activist, or have you always been an activist?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably always been, involved in activism in some description, but I've probably come to prominence with some of the online activism around Palestine. But like comedy first, I would say, definitely like satire first, activism second, for sure. Yeah.
That's how I first saw you. I saw your videos where you would be like several people in one video. And I was just like, this, we need this. We need this. You're one of a few comedians who have used your gift to basically make people feel a little bit better about the insanity that is happening right now. You actually were on one of the flotillas, which is incredible. How did that come about?
I mean, I didn't go through the normal application process that everyone else had to do, I suppose, not because there's anything special about me, but because I am friends with Tiago Avila, and he's one of the main organizers. And so he said to me, I was at an event with him in London, and I knew that he got a young daughter, and I have 2 young kids. And he was saying that he was still going. And I just thought, well, if he's going, then I can't really use the excuse that people with young kids can't go or shouldn't go. And so when he kind of just asked me straight out, would I be interested in going, that it could be potentially useful. And then I thought, I'll come home and I'll talk to my partner about it, because I can't make the decision without it being a family affair. Sure. And I'm just so lucky that I've got a partner who is completely part of the movement, and not just the pro-Palestine movement, but she just cares about other human beings. She's just a decent person. She always has been. In fact, she taught me a lot about empathy and kind of going the extra mile for people. So it was a family decision to go. And the main reason I went, though, is that I felt I could be useful. Like we may or may not get into it, but I used to have a pretty bad drink and drug issue. And part of getting sober was about being authentic and about being useful. So if I feel like I'm delighted the way you put it at the start, that my skill set can be useful to this cause. And that became very apparent early on, that I can absolutely go to the marches and I can do lots of stuff to support the Palestinian cause, but I can also use my specific skill set. And if everyone used their specific skill set, we'd have quite a powerful team, I think. So because Tiago and others had said that, like, hopefully I'm a decent communicator, and hopefully I'm decent at this kind of satirical side of things, that there was probably no better time to satirize Israeli Hasbara than when they were hammering us with a lot of propaganda about what was actually going on in the flotilla. And I'd like to think my satire was able to play a little role in kind of upending a lot of that propaganda. But then, to be honest with you, Joy, we are kind of living in a post-evidence world. So I did a sketch with Greta Thunberg on the boat, and it included so much aid that we had. Like, the boat was absolutely full of aid, and the sketch went viral. But yet still, when the Israelis came on board and confiscated our boat, they threw all the aid off and replaced it with things like mojito making machines. And they just put out their own video that we didn't have any aid on board. And I just thought, like, but there's been a viral sketch of the aid. So you're lying, and it kind of doesn't matter. And this is kind of the world that we're in right now. Again, I think Trump exemplifies it beautifully, whereas, like, it really doesn't matter what the truth is. There's just my narrative, and then there's the truth. But I'm just going to hammer my narrative so hard that my base are still going to just go for it, and we'll get away with it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how the flotilla thing came about.
I am actually going to try to play that exact video.
Oh, cool.
Attempt to. I do not
believe
have
in you. I
my
believe in you
helmet.
like 100%.
Let's see here. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Let's see. Oops.
That looks good. Looks like you're making progress anyway.
Come on, come on. All right, here we go. This will be worth it, you guys, I swear.
I can't wait to see it again.
Here we go. Here we are.
Well done.
Well, it's not playing yet.
Wake up. Great news. The UN and Bernie Sanders are now finally saying it's a genocide. And some celebrities in gala gowns are now mentioning you in their speeches. And some of them are even sharing stuff on their Instagram story.
She's just darling.
Wake up.
She's great.
Great news.
Were you
the UN
trepidatious?
are now finally saying it's a genocide. And some celebrities in gala gowns are now mentioning you in their speeches. And some of them are even sharing stuff on their Instagram story.
Were you trepidatious going on one of the flotillas that had arguably the most famous person?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were going to be the biggest target.
Yeah. Well, it's funny the way it worked out. So I think initially there was two kind of motherships, right? So there was the Alma, which I was put on, and then there was the Family, which Greta was put on. And I don't even fully understand why or how, but there was an awful lot of kind of swapping and people moving on to other boats. Like, at one point, the Family boat became defunct because we had saboteurs within our midst. So there was a guy who, every time he'd get on a boat, the boat would become dysfunctional inside the next few hours. And I think about 4 or 5 boats came a cropper because of this one dude.
Wow.
And so the Family was the mothership. So in the case of the Family, a lot of the people from that boat had to move on to our boat. So there was lots of weird kind of things that happened where myself and Greta had started off on different boats, but then ended up on the same boat together. But I actually kind of think it was almost meant to be, because I think parts of the journey and the pressure that's on her, you know, it seemed to me as an outsider, it looks to be really tough to be Greta Thunberg at times, because people want to speak to her, but not always for the right reasons or for good reasons. You know, the media wants to talk about her, but they want to kind of make a bit of a circus out of her, I think. They're also really just heavily kind of critical of her because I don't think they can actually understand, again, her authenticity, that she's just doing these things not because she's like, you know, trying to make money or she's trying to look for attention, but kind of the opposite of those reasons. So I just think Greta just blows people's minds, particularly kind of older white imperialist men. I just think that she kind of just does something to their brains that they just can't quite take her in. So when she came onto our boat I'd like to think was pretty chilled out, and we just had a lot of fun. And I just thought she was really funny. Like, she was taking the piss out of me straight away in a really, really funny way. Like, we'd stopped, I think it was in Tunisia at one point, and somebody was coming up to her asking could they get a photo with her, and I was in a pretend way saying this was really putting me out because I liked to be the most famous person on the boat, and nobody was asking me for photos. And then we were having a bit of fun with that. And then suddenly this woman came over and asked for a photo with me. And I was like, oh, cool, great. And I said, oh, do you mind me asking, like, where do you know me from, or how do you know my work or whatever? And she said, oh, I don't know who you are at all. That girl over there, Greta, just told me to come over and take a photo with you. So she was like, amazing. The world's most famous climate activist was trolling me like on day 1 or 2, you know? So because I realized she was really funny, I was like, let's do some sketches. Let's do some comedy sketches. And I'd like to think that kind of it helped her to just relax and be playful. And she's quite childlike and I mean, she's super, super smart, super funny, but she's also quite childlike and playful and whatnot. So I'd like to think that our boat created a nice atmosphere for her to just be playful and be herself.
Definitely. And you know, because your skits are so therapeutic and mentally helpful to people who are just absolutely depressed and filled with anxiety because of everything going on. Do you feel that it's therapeutic to yourself as well?
I mean, it has been. It certainly has been. I feel like I'm kind of, as the world is getting more and more messed up, and I mean, it's at a point now where I don't know, do you agree? But I mean, every time I turn on the news now, especially with the release of the Epstein files, we're kind of at a point where I didn't even think things were this bad, you know, especially pre-Gaza, from Gaza onwards into what Trump is doing with extrajudicial murders and abducting other people's presidents and, you know, threatening all out. I can't believe there's another war, an all-out war being threatened in the Middle East. Like, I just cannot believe I'm living through this period where it seems like Iraq was the ultimate lesson to be learned, that it just doesn't work, that Western imperialism, US-led imperialism always is bad for everyone, except for, I suppose, the people who sell weapons and manufacture weapons and whatnot. And then with the Epstein files, it feels like we're in an era now where things are so much more worse than I would have even thought in my darkest, most dystopian nightmares, that I feel like my comedy hopefully is evolving from just making myself and other people feel better into, I want to try and do my little bit to try and encourage people to take action, you know. And it's funny, in all the pro-Palestine groups I'm in at the moment, you know, when we meet, all the events that I'm part of, everyone is of the same mindset where they're kind of going, like, we've come this far with symbolism, but now we've got to fuck things up. Like, we've got to, like, you know, there's just no negotiating with power structures that are as corrupt and as depraved as we now know that they are. So I'm trying to escalate my satire from, here's the problem, it's diagnosing the problem, and it's hopefully making other people feel good that there's people understand what's going on, and we can kind of consolidate that and say, okay, we know what the problem is and we're not like the problem, and here we are on this side of the fence, to now escalating into, okay, what are we going to do about it? So I would love the comedy to kind of play some sort of, you know, revolutionary role, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, like, and obviously not just me, but to be part of a kind of a media landscape or a satire landscape that isn't just satirizing and then we all go home and become depressed again, but that we get emboldened to try and make some change, you know?
No, I mean, you're doing very well at it. You're amazing. I try not to do that on the show, but you know, sometimes I can't help it. So I digress a bit, but this person who got on the boats and kind of tried to sabotage thing, was it someone people knew?
No, so I mean, I should say as well that like this is coming from me and it's not official documentation or whatnot. So I mean it is kind of conjecture, but like I think the philosopher David Hume talks about constant conjunction versus necessary connection. So we can't create a necessary connection between this guy and the boats all malfunctioning. But what we can say for sure is that every time he went on a boat, then in the next day or two, that boat would malfunction. And so it was the ambition of, I think, the whole mission that you're bringing through all these people, and you're just not going to have the opportunity to scrutinize every single person and where they've come from. And if somebody presents well in an interview and they've got the best of intentions and they've been sharing lots of stuff over the last couple of years, then they might look the part, and you don't have the time to do a deep dive into their history. But it seems like the guy in question was a kind of a recent enough convert to the Palestinian cause. And again, I don't have any hard and fast evidence, but there were, whilst we were on sea, whilst we were docking, there were constant attempts, some of them ridiculous, at infiltration. Like at one point, I think we were in possibly Greece. I think it was that Greece or Tunisia? But there was a guy came up to us and he was like, "Oh, hey guys, really support what you're doing. I'm really pro-Palestine myself. Any idea when you guys are getting moving or where you're going next?" You know, it was like there's a thing in Ireland and Britain, like where somebody's from the drug squad, but they're in disguise and they arrive and they're like, you know, "Oh, hey, fellow drug using kids," you know, this kind of thing. He was doing the like, you know, "Any chance I can get on your boat?" I mean, anybody who's just kind of like rocks up 2 weeks in and wants to get on your boat. I think it's another thing as well about the Mossad. I don't know, would you agree with this perception of them as being unchallengeably intelligent and devious, and you can't defeat them. And I'm sure some of them are like that, but also a lot of them are a mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we can see online, I mean, a lot of their online armies are some of the least nuanced, clever people you've ever encountered in your life. So Mossad, I think there's probably a big range there. And if there's a guy in kind of Bermuda shorts rocking up going, "Hey, fellow pro-Palestinians, can I get on your boat?" So
look
yeah,
how
so
normal I look. Come on, let me on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm one of you guys, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. And actually, we were all sitting out on the deck in our boat when that guy came over, and we all just literally were just like, we just didn't even acknowledge him. We were like, "That's pretty ridiculous." Like somebody was taking a video of him and stuff. So infiltration is, and of course it's a thing. I mean, this is what we know. What I mean, Israel does probably, you know, it's kind of that's its party piece, like that. It always looks to divide and conquer, and sadly, it's been very, very, very successful at doing that. So, yeah, infiltration, I think, from all of our point of view as activists, is something that we have to be really wide to.
Yeah, I know when you guys were on the boat, your videos were the constant that I was like, "Did he post today? Is everything okay? Oh my God." Like this is because you would see more and more videos coming out. If you see this video, it means, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." Were you pretty certain they would end up taking you guys?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because, you know, the whole bit of the training, emphasis of the training was, you know, we're going to Gaza, like 100%, our whole aim and focus is on breaking the siege. And although we know that's kind of unlikely, just by the history of the flotillas, not many people in recent years anyway have actually gotten through. You still get into the mindset of totally believing that you're going to get through. And I think that's good for you in a way. You just, the positivity kind of, you know, is overwhelming. Also, there'd never been as many boats, there'd never been as many participants. And so there was a real tangible hope that maybe some of us are going to kind of squeak through. And actually that's the case as well, that we nearly did. I mean, some boats got as close as like 20 nautical miles or maybe even a bit less. And the sun was up and they could actually see Gaza, you know what I mean? So it was kind of getting to the point where it was, I do think for the next mission, if they do have double the boats and double the participants, I'm really, other than kind of bringing in some of the NATO countries, I'm not sure what Israel can do, because they already are at capacity for trying to stop us from what we're doing. But I suppose as the days were going on and the threats were going on as to what they were going to do to us, you start to kind of think, if interception happens, I'd almost take that right now, because there was definitely moments where there was one night in particular where there was drone strikes overhead the whole night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. About 12 or 13 of the boats had been hit, and at the time we didn't know what they were. We didn't know, were they straight up like lethal drones designed to kill, or were they improvised devices just trying to scare us? And I mean, at that point, you're kind of thinking, I take interception right now, because I mean, I absolutely believe in this cause, but I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to be killed. I don't want to leave a young family, especially not for a cause at this moment in it, where it feels like even if I was killed right now, would it make enough of a difference to really kind of change things? I'm not sure. There was just such a lack of compassion, I think, from most of the Western governments about what Western activists were trying to do. I mean, my own government, at one point we were struck in Tunisia, and the Tunisian authorities, obviously with some Zionist pressure in their ears, put out this story that it wasn't a drone attack in Tunisia at all, but that it was a cigarette, that it was somebody on board had basically set fire to the boat. And my own national broadcaster in Ireland ran with that story, and I was asked about that in an interview. I actually found that really depressing, because I was kind of thinking, it's one thing to be out here and maybe potentially being killed. It's quite another thing for your family maybe to not know for sure what happened, that your own news network in Ireland might run with the story that I lit, I don't know, a giant cigarette and kind of, you know, put everyone on fire. Like, that's pretty grim, you know?
Yeah. One of your videos really spoke to me, because as Westerners who are, Palestine activists, we do kind of glorify Ireland, because as a whole, I mean, you have people like Claire, you have Mick, you have these people who are so balls to the wall, and there are, there's so much going on there that we don't have, like people sticking up for Palestine, things like that. And you made a video saying that we don't understand fully what's going on as you do, as someone who lives there. So can you kind of touch on that as to what really goes on in Ireland that we may be missing?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm so delighted that you say that about Ireland, because it is, on one level, it is completely true. And I like, you look up to people like Mick and Claire, and they've shown me the way, and lots of other people the way as well. And so when it comes to the Irish people, I do think we're way over and above when it comes to solidarity with substance, and we do put our necks out there. And a lot of us have our careers like on hold for the activism that we're doing for Palestine in particular. But I think what gets missing in that kind of narrative or that perspective is just how weak and how captured the Irish establishment is. So you've got the people on one hand who, go the extra mile, and then you have a government and a media class that are so beholden, particularly to US interests. So there's no real, we don't have, like, I mean, I can think of one or two people in Ireland who are ideological Zionists, that they actually believe in the cause of Israel. One is a kind of a high profile ex-minister in Ireland, and he's Jewish, and he's the real deal. I mean, I mightn't agree with his views at all, but he's an actual Zionist. Most of the people in power are just kind of soft on Zionism, because if they're to be tough and if they're to really go and represent what the people think, then they will piss off Donald Trump effectively. And Ireland is so scared of doing anything that annoys the US, because they have us in a kind of an economic vice grips, and big pharma and big tech effectively fuel the Irish economy. So, and I can understand it, you know what I mean? Like, I have my own views about the way in which the world should work, and I'm much more socialistic in my thinking, and I think we should move beyond capitalism. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is in Ireland or most Western so-called democracies, and we're very much kind of a neoliberal state here, and we're very dependent on US foreign investment. So nobody wants to be the leader of the country that annoys the Americans so much that they take out their big companies and the economy falls apart. No matter how much they might probably privately support the Palestinian cause, and they see that the Irish cause for liberation and the Palestinian cause for liberation have so much in common. They mirror each other in so many different ways. Perhaps the scale of the atrocities that are going on in Palestine now have reached a new level that the Irish can't even identify with. But yeah, we're at a real crossroads in Ireland. Like, it really is kind of our pockets or our souls right now. And there's been moments, and after the flotilla was one of them, where it really felt like there was enough anger from people that it would spill out onto the streets and we would properly become ungovernable, and it would actually bring this government down. That's how passionate the people are on the Palestinian cause. But as I say, the media class, I mean, in the case of the media, Francesca Albanese like actually described RT, our national broadcaster, as a special case. We were so beholden and so captured by the Israeli narrative that we were using Israeli think tank talking points in interviews with her. She left the room for one RT radio interview to get some air. Like, she was gasping at just how incredulous this gap again was between the Irish people and the Irish media. We're just so scared to do anything the Americans will find objectionable.
As someone who does not live in the United States, this is kind of a broad question, but what do you and your comrades think of our country? And like our role specifically in this genocide?
Yeah, in terms of the US, I mean, somebody of my politics, I suppose, would always have been kind of bemused by the way that America in Ireland, in terms of what I would consider establishment Ireland or commercial Ireland, America is deeply fetishized. And I would say it's probably mutual. You know, there's lots of towns and villages and counties in Ireland that are dependent on US tourism. I mean, Kerry, for instance, in Ireland, I mean, without US tourism, a lot of the economy in Kerry would, I think, probably fall apart. And obviously there's the Irish America thing, and I'd always have a perspective on the diaspora. You'd have to keep in mind the fact that this is another consequence of colonialism. So I don't want to say all Irish Americans are embarrassing, even though a big portion of them are. My perspective, I suppose, as somebody who would be an anti-imperialist growing up and just starting to read, particularly in college and from college onwards, was the fact that we were kind of brought up in this paradigm that basically the US and Britain were kind of the good guys, and that Russia and any of the brown countries, take your pick on whatever day of the week it is, they're kind of they're the baddies, and that's always the way it is. But I mean, like, US interventionism in Latin America, the horrors of the Vietnam War, and then more up to date, the unspeakable atrocities in Iraq. At the very least, I think me and my comrades in Ireland would see the US as not the good guys. I mean, a more interesting philosophical argument there is, are there any good guys? I'm not for one second saying actually China, Russia, Iran, take your pick of any of the bogeymen that we hear about in the West. I'm not saying they're good guys, but I think the idea that Britain and the US are somehow the ones that the Irish should, you know, hitch our cart to, I think is shameful and laughable. Now, the US has gone on to a completely new level in the last few years, though, from Biden onwards. I mean, Trump gets all the headlines because he's just kind of cartoonish, evil and obnoxious and whatnot. But Biden is an ideological Zionist, and Biden did more damage, I think, to the very just Palestinian cause, and has so much blood on his hands as a Democrat that I think the US, I'm going to say US, my good friend Leila Higazi was just over with me for some events here in the last while, and she said we should call it the US, and she's dead right. We shouldn't fall into that trap of calling vast swathes of, you know, an entire hemisphere is America, not the country. But I think ordinary people that wouldn't have necessarily been anti-imperialist are now seeing just how heinous the US is in its role in Gaza, in its lawlessness, even outside of Gaza in the last few years, and just how much it's corrupted and defiled by the Epstein case. You know, there's people in Iran, friends of mine in Iran, are calling the US the Epstein regime now, and I think that's very fitting. It's caught up in, I think, the most unspeakable political scandal of all time. It's become, particularly the Republican Party and the Trump administration, it's become openly the pedophile protector party. And there's a new shame on the US right now. And I think a big part of that is, whether because they're compromised or not, this fidelity to Israel, this protecting Israel at any cause, I think has made both those nations complete pariah states. And I would imagine, as an outsider, I read people like Chris Hedges who've been talking about this for years, that it now seems like the US has a lot of the elements of a country that's moving towards civil war. And whilst I don't want to see any innocent people die, I just don't see how you reform a society like the US or Israel. I mean, and they are one and the same. That is the Epstein regime. I mean, how do you feel? Because I'm kind of loathsome to be saying, oh, your country's shit, like it needs to burn to the ground.
I mean,
but then again,
I mean, like, it is mortifying. And I find myself, when I talk to Palestinians, and, one of my best friends is from Iran, and when I talk to them, I find myself actually apologizing and saying, I am so sorry for what my country is doing. And they know it's not me and stuff, but it is me. I'm American. It's, if my country actually listened to we the people, we wouldn't be in this mess. And I do place so much blame on Biden. I mean, Bibi said, Biden was the best thing to ever happen to us. He literally said that, if it wasn't for our money and our weapons, this shit would have ended in like a month. Yeah. And having to reconcile with that is just, it's awful. I mean, when I look at how I was when I was younger, I was like, oh, I parroted our country is the best in the world because we have education and we have, and now, when I'm like almost 50, I'm like thinking, okay, we have no healthcare, we have no college, we have, and I'm learning so much about other countries, and I'm just like, our country is a terrorist state, which is very sad. And the fact that it's called United States is also infuriating, because it implies that we're all one, and we so are not.
Yeah, well, that's very, very, very clear that you're not all one. But I should say as well, I mean, it's worth clarifying. I don't obviously mean the people of the US, and I think it's important to keep hammering that home, because some of the brightest, most fun, most engaged, most dedicated activists, for instance, in this movement are from the US, and like really great friends of mine are in the US. So you've got the heaven and hell there, like, that's for sure. Plus, for me, it's such a melting pot that, like, what even is the US? You know what I mean? Like, if I've got friends that are born in the US, but they maybe are like mixed race, and they identify one or more of the two countries that kind of literally created them, I suppose, like in terms of their parents. So it's a melting pot. It's everything and it's nothing. And I think you mentioned Iran. It's very important as well to say, like, I've been to Iran. I have many friends from Iran. They're so clear in their rhetoric against the US that it's the US empire they're against, not US people. They welcome US journalists, like open arms, and activists and comedians and whatnot, and people who just want to look beyond the propaganda. That when they say death to America, it's death to the American state. Like, it's never death to the people, and the way this the various administrations have always cynically exploited that kind of rhetoric, as if they hate the people. I mean, the problem is that the successive administrations have done such brutal damage. I mean, if you just look at Iran, like with what Iran has gone through with the sanctions, it's just extraordinary that the country is still standing at all. You know what I mean? That's it's by design. Like, it's not, I mean, sanctions are never an accidental thing. It's and they've come out and said it recently. They've been really open. It's like, this was always the plan. We're going to try and strangle this country economically to bring down the regime. This is not tinfoil hat stuff from us. Like, it's what they're screaming at us was their intention all along.
Absolutely. This is kind of a loaded question, but on that topic, I mean, people in the terrorist state of Israel, do you think, I mean, because we are, you see these, percentages and these polls and stuff, but it's how many people did they ask? Did they ask people
Yeah.
specifically in IDF? Like, but there are a lot of people who are not fans of Palestinians and are very supportive of obliterating it. Did you
Yeah.
meet any people in Israel who are like, yes, this needs to end?
I mean, I didn't meet any like dissidents or anything like that, but I mean, you're touching on such an interesting issue, which is, there I am and there you are separating the people from the government. It seems to me that the distance between the government and the people in Israel is quite small. That's quite a short
Yeah.
distance in terms of the one issue of Palestine, for sure. And people who are far more engaged and eloquent than I'll ever be on this have made that point ad nauseum, like Ilan Pape and Gideon Levy have always said that the distance is not great when it comes to the occupation, that you could, even long before October 7th, you could position yourself as a kind of a liberal Zionist and you could be pro LGBTQ plus and all these things. But when it comes to actual Palestine and the occupation, there is no space for that. Nobody ever talks about trying to undo the occupation. So I didn't come across anyone that was in any way bordering on dissident, but I did come across lots of people, particularly when we were in the prison, who were vehemently, like almost obsessively anti-Palestine. And when they would shut our prison door at night, when they've done some arbitrary check on the amount of people in the cell, they would say like, fuck Palestine as they close the door. And it felt like it was kind of to antagonize us, but it's also just built in them that that's their kind of flex, like actually a better example is when they were processing us and they were going through all our clothes, like they took my keffiyeh and any Palestine jumper or jersey that I had in my bag and they would be like, oh yuck, that's disgusting, and they're like throw it in the bin and stuff as this kind of show of strength, but obviously they just looked absolutely ridiculously weak as they did it. But the anti-Palestine thing is certainly in terms of like government jobs or the army or the police or whatever, I think that's part of who they are. That is not to say, though, that they're evil. I actually don't believe that any group of people are evil, or I think the existence of evil itself is a kind of it's a metaphysical thing. So I'm not really sure what to say about it. Like it's a speculation, because evil is kind of is a metaphysical concept, isn't it? Whereas I think we just have in the case of Israelis that they're the most propagandized people on earth, and again, Ilan Pape spoke about this when he looked at the education system in Israel like 10, 20, 30 years ago. He was like, the product of this education system is going to be an all-out genocidal society. Like you're being taught to despise Arabs and feel like if you don't kill them, they're going to kill you. So I feel like rather than them being kind of evil and that evil came out of, a cipher, I feel like the propaganda is so strong there that it will take generations to undo it. And I haven't met anybody over there that kind of ticked the box where I want something different, but then we wouldn't have either because we were only being exposed to the minions of the state, really. And also the prison guards, I thought that we weren't getting their best people, like the guys who came on the boat, in my case, because I had moved on to a little boat by the end, the guys who came onto the boat, I'd say they were like 18 or 19 years of age. One of them was trembling. So it was obviously his first interception. It's hard for me to think of him as an evil, twisted person. I think instead he's a guy who's gone through an awful lot of propaganda to do whatever the hell he has been doing over the last year or two,
And they're being threatened with arrest if they don't join IDF. So that's also, I mean, lack of a better term, it is a hostage situation. It's, be traumatically, affected by having to do what you're doing to people, or be traumatically affected by being in a prison and being tortured. Those are your choices. So exactly. I can understand that. That's actually an interesting perspective. As far as what's going in Palestine, this is a kind of conjecture, but we still see these numbers. Of course, the media are still using like 39,000, which it hasn't been for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, people like, University of Harvard and stuff are saying it's more like 400,000. That was months ago. I mean, do you think we've hit like 1 million now?
I mean, I don't know what the true figure is, but one thing I know for sure is that it feels like the Israelis are now plotting and planning for that figure never getting out.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, what they'll just start doing is rebuilding over the corpses, rebuilding over people stuck in the rubble, and they will just literally construct over their crimes. They would build over, I was going to say graveyards, but they've never afforded Palestinians the human dignity to have any graveyards. Even if they did, they dig them up. I was in Lebanon, and I was in a small town in the south of Lebanon, the name of which escapes me, but I saw how when the Israelis come in, this was after a ceasefire with Hezbollah, and one of the things they do is they destroy the town. So they destroy any remnants of life in the town afterwards, which seemed like a really strange thing to do in ceasefire time. But part of the things they destroy would be olive trees that have stood there for like 1,000 years and graveyards. So like you're dealing with a kind of a society or a kind of thinking, which is there are no limits. Like there's no limits whatsoever. Also, I'm sure you probably saw the fact that they kind of acknowledged the 70,000 figure as a means, I think, of then springing, when a much larger figure comes along afterwards, they'll have some protection for it, I think, But I don't know, will we ever know the true figure? And I don't know, will there ever be like foreign journalists in? But actually on the foreign journalist thing, I have mixed feelings on that. I don't know, do you agree? We have this obsession with foreign journalists. If we could just get foreign journalists in there and they would describe the crimes and whatnot, you're kind of going,
right.
We've had hundreds of Palestinian journalists there telling you exactly what's been going on every day, like live streaming it, getting killed for it. 250 of them have been murdered doing it. And you still doubt them because why? Are they biased about their own genocide?
Right.
I think it's just another form of the. I can't think of a people who are more systematically dehumanized more than the Palestinians. And the thing that I find shocking is that when maybe people like you and me have been screaming about it for the last 2.5 years, that the dehumanization only increases. Like you couldn't possibly like feel that that a people are human. You couldn't possibly feel that way about them if you were to proceed with a peace plan that doesn't involve them. Like there's no real Palestinian participation in this peace plan, and yet a lot of the Arab states have signed up for it. I can't think of a more perfect crystallization of a completely dehumanized perspective than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're so right. Also kind of I don't know, it's a very difficult thing to answer, but what do you I saw last night on my show, I covered, I don't know if you saw this. Israel's now using this war machine that is actually outlawed by the UN and what have you, that literally vaporizes people. So what they're doing is literally putting it on Palestinians and it turns them into ash.
Yeah.
So we're not going to know the real true number.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah.
That's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Not necessarily what do you want. What are we going to be able to stop this?
I mean, like I'm an optimist by nature, and it's always tough to be optimistic and openly optimistic or positive when the slaughter continues. Like I was fortunate enough to be invited to the Al Jazeera forum recently in Doha, and the first couple of days of the events, some were leaders and prominent people were speaking about what they had kind of contributed over the last 2 years, just in case you think that they kind of didn't do enough. And I understood where they were coming from, where they were clarifying some of the things that they had done, but it just seemed to me to be a bit obscene to be talking about what we had done about a genocide that's ongoing. You know, it's not something that we're reflecting on. I mean, it wasn't like, let's get people together who played a prominent role in bringing something to an end like 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, it's ongoing. There's been 600 people murdered since the bloody so-called ceasefire has been called. So in light of all that, it's tricky to be positive, but I will just maybe highlight some of the positive things that I'm seeing all around me all the time. Like PAL action in Britain looks like it's at least on the road now to proscription, if that's a word. And a lot of the activists who have stuck their head above the parapet and carried out actions against Elbit Systems and other groups, they are now on a route to gaining bail, and there won't be any serious aggravated burglary or any of those other charges against them. Like that is quite significant, because the lobby in this part of the world have thrown so much of their time and resources against PAL action. We all know it's ludicrous. Even they know it's ludicrous. But I'm just seeing a little bit of common sense kind of creeping in, I know the online discourse is not everything, but every single time Israel, I'm sure you've seen this yourself, you're one of the people who still sticks out the misery of Twitter like me. Every time Israel posts anything vaguely, gaslighty, where it tries to position itself, it does Valentine's Day posts, it goes, look at this beautiful olive tree. The likes on the post will be like 600 or 700, and then the views will be millions, and it's just the whole world talking about what a piece of shit they are. That's positive. And I'm not saying like talking shit against people on the internet is always a positive thing. Of course not. But it feels like I just believe the world is not going to let Israel do what it wants to do, which is, we've called the ceasefire, look the other way. There are other genocides going on in the world. We've kind of stopped ours now, and Islam is really, really bad. Let's focus on that, and let's focus on intervention in Iran. I just don't feel, particularly the young people, they're so tech savvy, they're so media savvy. I just don't feel like the world collectively is going to let Israel away with its crimes. And I think a lot of us are in it for the long haul. There's some of us are kind of escalating what we've been doing, but I haven't noticed, nobody's dropping off. Nobody is kind of saying like, oh yeah, I was on that for a while now, and I've done my bit and I'm gone over here. I'm not really seeing that. I mean, it's not a fad. Once you see, I think the first time you see a father, carrying bags of human flesh that have been allocated to him that may be one of his children. I mean, when you see an image like that, I think it stays with you for life, and then you're part of that cause. And the problem the Israelis have is we've seen it all. I even feel like they're kind of shutting the gates of the social media thing and buying CBS and stuff, but I believe it's too late. Certainly for this generation and older, it's too late. We've seen everything. You know what I mean? And in fact, it makes us hate them more, I think, because they're trying to, put the cat back in the bag now, I think. And the fact that international law as well has been so weak, and we see that a lot of the things that we probably all thought were roughly real and were there, the rules-based order and all this kind of nonsense, because they have offered Israel so much impunity, it's made so many people angry around the world that gives me a lot of cause for hope that they shouldn't, I think that nation as it is shouldn't have a moment's peace, and I don't see them getting one.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, one of the things about Americans that truly is infuriating to me is even people who support Palestine seem to think that if Bibi were removed, everything would get better. And it's very infuriating to try to convince people that this is not a one-man thing. It's not. And yesterday it came out that he had cancer, and people were like, oh, good, he'll have to step down, things are going to change. What do you tell people when they say that?
Well, all you simply have to look at is the coalition that he's built around him. He's brought in some of the most the war fringe, radical, openly racist, some of them in the case of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. I mean, these people have been convicted of terrorism in Israel. Like, imagine being convicted of terrorism in Israel for your anti-Arab activities. I mean, these are just the lowest of the low, and these are the people waiting to take over. Because he's done this deal with the devil, he has completely shifted the ground in Israel, where it feels like, I mean, I always thought the idea of liberal Zionism was kind of an oxymoron anyway, but it's now laughable. Like, it's completely in the rear view. So I would say that whatever's going to come after this guy is going to be much, much worse. And I think, like, use Iran as an example. I mean, I have my own views on Iran, but there's a kind of a predominant Western view of Iran that we've got to destroy the regime and whatnot. It'd be kind of like saying, once we take out the supreme leader, then that would defeat Iran. But like, Iran has put structures in place, really complex structures with multiple armies, and its power is kind of, kind of fractionalized across all streams of society. Taking out the supreme leader, they'll just bring in another supreme leader. And I think if you believe that Iran is a regime, I think there's no better example of a regime on earth right now than Israel, and arguably the US and Israel together. So, and I mean, as you touched on earlier, and I've probably been saying ad nauseum, no one's evil and all that stuff, but we are talking about the most propagandized people, I would say, on earth, the most. And this is why they lose their minds in arguments online, because the rest of us haven't been propagandized like that. And the rest of us just find the mass murder of people, who, wherever they are, obscene. Whereas the Israelis and the Zionists have been brought up to have an exceptionalism around Palestinians and kind of say, like, oh, generally speaking, we're against mass murder, but unfortunately, these guys are going to murder us if we don't murder them. You know what I mean? So, so if you're talking about a society that, I mean, recently we're looking at polls like where half of Jewish Israelis were supportive of, like, effectively genocide, or like killing everyone in the territory. I think it was around, wasn't it? It was around, I mean, Norman Finkelstein talking about that. It was about 49-50% of Israeli society. If that's the stat, then getting rid of Netanyahu is like, I don't think that even begins to solve the issue. It would have to be like a re-education program. And I suppose what's scary about that is there's no political will for that to happen whatsoever. So my own view is that the US and Israel have to fall together, I think, because they're so entwined with each other. I think they'll have to bring each other down in order for the kind of radical change that we need to see in so-called Israel to happen, I think.
Yeah, you're so right. What is your advice to people as to, amidst everything, to give them hope, to what gives you hope, and what can you suggest to be hopeful about to the viewers?
What gives me hope is you doing this show right now, especially from the US. No, I mean it. Like, people always give me hope, so I always say to people, we need to organize better as a pro-humanity, anti-billionaire movement. There's probably about 3,000 billionaires on Earth that are hell-bent on destroying the planet and normalizing mass murder of men, women, and children. We have all the numbers. The problem that we face more than anything else is we're disincentivized, we're lethargic, but that's the game. Like, that's what neoliberalism intended to do all along. They just want us on our phones feeling sad about ourselves and buying tat on the internet to make ourselves feel better. I meet people like you all the time who are passionate, who are dedicated, who have really great ideas, and we just need to put them together more and embolden each other, I think, to support each other more when we're taking direct actions. And for the people who stick their head above the parapet, the people in the likes of Pal Action, the people who are part of resistance movements, we need to be stronger, I think, in not allowing a Western narrative to dismiss resistance movements from the conversation, because those people don't want a peace settlement. You couldn't possibly want a peace settlement and not allow one group who are going to be involved in the peace to have their representatives at the table. And that's what it comes down to. There would have been no peace in South Africa and no peace in Ireland if the respective resistance movements of those countries were continually criminalized and left out of the conversation. So I'm hopeful by the people that I meet all the time, young, enthusiastic, older, enthusiastic, it doesn't matter, wonderful people who have the right intentions, and they just, all they need, I think, is to be formalized into a kind of into the movement a little bit more, emboldened to take extra actions and be supported by taking the extra actions. We have the people, we have the energy. Our cause is the just cause. Deep in my soul, I know that. And for all the hits that maybe even I've had personally, I wouldn't even for a moment reconsider what am I going to do? Like join the other side, like start taking 7,000 euro pop, start tweeting on behalf of the Zionist Empire? Never. And I think there's many, many people like me. So we just have to understand as well that this is a marathon and not a sprint. If people look at South Africa, look at Vietnam, look at Ireland, we just have to be in it for the long haul, and importantly support each other and love each other and embolden each other as we take this journey together.
Absolutely. That is the best way to end our show, without question. Tadhg, thank you so much. I cannot tell you enough how much I have enjoyed our conversation and how excited I am to finally be able to kind of like meet you in some way.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
So,
like, what's your address? No, I'm just kidding.
My home address should be just coming up on the credits at the end of this video. I'm not on Instagram because I'm banned on Instagram, but I'm on YouTube and I'm on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And look out for, I'm doing a new satire show with a great activist and comedian called Nicole Jennings, and we've just gotten a little bit of investment to try and make a proper series of that. So look out for No, excuse me, NOOW. It stands for Not on Our Watch. So you can follow Now on Instagram and all those other places for as long as our tech overlords allow me to have a presence.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. You are definitely one of my most favoritist people online. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please buy my book. It's brand new, only a few months old. I interviewed a gentleman from prison who's been wrongly convicted and imprisoned for close to 40 years, who has been proven innocent, who is still in there. I went to the prison to talk to him after 5 years of interviews, and this is his story and my story, getting to know him. Our friend Temujin, the wrongful conviction of Temujin Kensu. So you can get it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So, and with every single book I sell, I do donate to Heal Palestine, which is an incredible organization that helps with tents and baby formula and things like that. So you're also helping them out as well. Again, thank you so much, Tadhg. You are amazing. And I hate to be like, oh my God, with guests, but like, I'm just so happy that we got to connect, and you're amazing. Keep doing everything you are doing, and you inspire more people than you know.
My pleasure, Joy. And let me know where to get your book. That sounds amazing. I'll definitely check it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys again for watching. Much love, Tadhg, and everyone watching. As always, free Palestine, free Congo, free Lebanon, free like everyone, just free everyone. Thanks again. Take care, everyone. Much love.